Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you'll be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. If you've been inspired by the guests that we've had on the podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, hit notification bells, whatever you can do on the platforms that you're listening on, so that more people have the opportunity of hearing these and engaging in our community. Hello everyone, this is Daphne and Andrew. Our guests today are Ben and Debbie Block. Now, for people that don't know who you are, could you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do?
Yes. Hello. It's so great to be here. It's such a privilege. So thanks so much for having us on the podcast today. My name is Ben and Debbie Block, and we're missionaries here in Japan. So we've been married for over 10 years and in full-time ministry for over 10 years. And we're happy to be serving the Lord here in Asia.
And for people that hear this, they think, I like this couple. We want to see more of what they're doing. Maybe hear some of the stuff that you're putting out. Where could they do that?
You can go to our website at theblockfam.com, as in the Block family, theblockfam.com, and check us out there. That'd be great. Yeah, we'd love to have more people join us on the journey. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and on Instagram, we're both Ben J Block and Deb J Block are our usernames. And I think on Facebook, Benjamin Block and Debbie Joy Block.
Okay, yeah. I'll put those links in the description box.
Thanks so much.
Now, you say you're in Japan, but could you just say a bit about where you're both from? Because I know for Ben, this might be a bit of a clearer response. It might get a little interesting when Debbie starts to share a bit about where she's from.
Yeah, that's right. So I was born and raised in Minnesota and moved to California and Oklahoma, which is where we met in Spanish class and at Oral Roberts University, and then moved again to Michigan and Florida. So that's kind of where I'm from.
Originally from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Originally from Minnesota.
And did you come from a Christian family?
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian home. I was actually born on a Sunday, and my mom says I was born on a Sunday and in church the next Sunday. So, yeah, grew up in the church, grew up loving the Lord. Very, very thankful for that. What about you?
Yeah, you've probably heard of my parents, Becky and Jeff Rubik. I think they've been on here before. They are the directors of Project Paz International. It used to be Project Amazon. Paz International, which is located in Brazil, in Santarém, the north of Brazil. And that is where I was born and raised, up in the Amazon. And so I was a little white girl in this city of no other blonde girls. And then but totally feeling totally Brazilian. I just grew up saying I'm Brazilian, but definitely American blood. Then I moved to the United States for college. That was my first time living in the United States. I got to the United States when I was 17 and went straight to Oklahoma, which is where I went to university at Oral Roberts University. And that's where I met Ben. So after living in Oklahoma for a little while, doing college there, Ben moved to Michigan and accepted a job offer at a church, a real awesome church in Michigan. And then soon after that, I moved there. We got married there in Michigan and lived there in Michigan before moving to Japan.
But I've got the missing link. I know the link that takes them from one place to another. She was in a city with no other blonde girls, so she thought, you know what, we'll move to Japan so I can be in a city with no other blonde girls. I mean,
so I can raise all my blonde girls in a city with no other blonde girls.
That's right. We sure still got it. That's for sure.
We can be the only blonde people wherever we move to.
I got the link now. We're good. We go on a roll here. So Debbie, you were born into a missional family. I mean, missions is in your generations. It's not just in your life. It spans generations. And maybe you can put some links to some other past people below, Andrew, that they can track the background of Debbie's story. So I might be wrong, but it must have been a cultural shock almost to you to be in a church and stationary in a church, just as it must have been a culture shock for Ben to suddenly fly across the world and be caught up with all the missions. You kind of swapped lives for a bit. Am I right in presuming that it was a bit of a culture shock for you to suddenly be, I'm in this church and I'm going nowhere?
Yes, that actually was a big culture shock for me because growing up as a missionary kid, I loved being a missionary. And I would always say, when I grew up, I want to be a missionary. And so I knew that, and I felt like that was God's calling on my life. And when I went to the United States, I did 4 years of college, and then I graduated. And I felt like my mom called. I was already signed up to get my master's degree at University of Oklahoma. And I had a house lined up where I was going to live. But my mom calls me and says, "Hey, Debbie, we're starting a church in Japan that's focused on young adults. And I think that you should go for a year. So pray about it." And I hung up. I was like, okay, well, that's not my plan right now. Right now, my plan is to finish my education, but I'll pray about it. And as I prayed about it, I felt like the Lord said, if you don't go now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Wow. So I took a year off in between undergrad and grad school, and I came to Japan back then as a single, college student and helped with this church plant. And it was such a time where the Lord confirmed in my heart my calling to missions. So then when I went back to America after that 1 year commitment, I did want to go back and get my master's degree. So I went back to America. And during that time, Ben tells me, hey, we liked each other in college. And he tells me, hey, I still like you. I thought about you every day since you were gone. And he's like, I want to be in a relationship with you. And so I said to him, well, I do feel a call of God for foreign missions, in my life. And I want you to get my dad's blessing. So you can go from there.
Yeah. So I had talked to her dad already and, wanted to pursue Debbie. And he really felt that she had a calling to missions. And that if I didn't have that similar calling, he felt it would be best for us not to pursue marriage because 15 years down the road or something, one of us would feel like, we're not really fulfilling what God has called us to do. If maybe I go overseas and I'm not really called to it, or she's in the States or whatever. So he really wanted me to have a calling to a missional calling as well. So we actually ended up calling our relationship off for that time while she was in Japan. And so then I ended up we were pursuing the Lord, what's God's will for our life and our relationship and everything. And I told her I still like her. And I eventually called her dad in Brazil. So I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I called her dad in Brazil and Mr. Rubik, hello, this is Ben, and he said, we have been praying. We prayed about it. They were just in South Africa. And he said, we prayed about it. We feel peace about you guys. And gave us the blessing. It was huge. Well, I think just before that, I had felt a calling from the Lord on my life to go to the nations. And they didn't know that. But it was so cool how it just, all the timing of it all worked out. And so God had spoken to me about going to the nations. And
so then going back to your original. Oh.
Yeah, so our callings did line up. So it was just real neat how God worked it all out. But
well, I'm going to jump in there just one sec, because there's several things you have said that so line up with the values that we know that you hold and we hold. I mean, first of all, we hear many tragic stories, don't we, about people who had a call of God on their lives.
Especially when they were younger.
Yeah. And they got into a relationship or they got into a job, especially a relationship, and they're adults and they cry. They said, that was me when I was younger. And that longing, I mean, the callings of God are irrevocable.
That was them when they were younger, feeling that calling to missions, but they laid that aside to pursue the relationship, and then when they're older, saying, you know what, I have that part of me that has that longing to be in the nations, but they never went.
Yeah, so it's hugely significant, I think, that we just press pause on that, because there is something higher than a relationship, and that's your relationship with Jesus and the call of God on his life. The other thing is that I just touch on is that you are highly respectful of Debbie's father in all this. And again, that is another value that can just be lost along the way, and just a grand announcement. So just wanted to point out those two hugely significant milestones along your journey.
Yeah, I guess as well, in America, you have this image of people going to the Father for permission, and he's on the deck with a rocking chair and a gun, but with Paul, or Jeff, sorry, it's more like, him in the Amazon sitting on his deck with a poison blow dart and a spear.
What's really funny is that when Ben called him to ask for his blessing, he calls Brazil. He doesn't know what the phone connection is going to be like. And then my dad says, we just got back from South Africa. While we were there, we're praying about you guys, and we feel the peace of God about you guys pursuing a relationship. And then the connection fell, and it goes blank.
Yeah.
And Ben's like,
lost the connection. Well, I got the blessing.
At least they got to the point straight away.
That's right.
I would just want to say to people listening that Debbie's parents we count as, among our, if not our dearest and closest friends. So we're allowed to tease them a little bit.
It would have been quite fun though if he just said, and we feel like God is saying, and then flat.
Yeah.
So, Debbie, I interrupted you. Do carry on.
Oh, yeah. So for us, knowing that we had a calling to the nations, it's kind of like, okay, well, what's our next step from here? We were still very young, just getting out of grad school. And Ben gets a phone call from a friend from college and says, hey, I want you to pray about coming to Michigan and joining the staff of our church as one of the youth and young adult staff. So Ben prayed about it. We talked to my parents about it. We actually weren't even married yet at this time, but right away, everyone had peace about it. My parents were like, this is great for you guys. Go get plugged in at the church, learn more about hands-on ministry, grow, in your relationship with God and in ministry there. And then we'll just keep praying, and we'll believe God will launch you out from there. And so Ben took that step and accepted the position at this church. And then I came along and we got married there. And so next thing you know, we had kind of a 5-year commitment there. And
can I say something too?
Yeah.
It's cool because my dad was like, he thought it'd be good for me to work somewhere for about 5 years. I think he said 5 years. And before I moved overseas or joined Pause International or something like that. So he mentioned 5. And then I think your mom said, oh, it'd be good to work somewhere for like 5 years and then go. And the pastor at our church in Michigan, Cornerstone Church, he said, I'd like for you to make a long-term commitment, which is at least 5 years. So it was like, it was all lining up. And I felt the Lord speak to me about, go to you join this church, and you felt the same thing,
yeah,
right?
One day as I was driving to work praying, should we go? I just heard the word go. And it was the same word Ben got, go, as we were at a young adult service.
It was so cool. It was all lining up. So then go.
So then we got very comfortable at the church. It was such a wonderful church, such a wonderful community, a big support. We bought our first house there. We had our first 2 children there. And it's just like, oh, ministry was fun. We're doing ministry with our friends. And so it is very easy to stop there, and say, this is wonderful. This is a good life, a consistent salary, community, we're raising our children in the church. We've got support. And it was very comfortable. But during that time, we still kept feeling the call of God in our lives for the nations. And so then as our 5-year mark was coming to an end, some other members of our church staff team were moving on to church plant and stuff like that. And so our pastor said, would you guys stay on a while longer? We were just having a baby. So we said, we prayed, let's stay on a little longer. But kind of in the meantime, we started having these conversations with our pastor. We feel a call of God to the nations. And so it's kind of, you asked, like, what was it like to have that? For me, living in getting stable in a church like that in America was a different experience, but I really liked it. I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. So when we came to the point of getting ready to move to Japan, it was very hard on me personally, because I was like, oh man, I felt like I was getting uprooted. So it's this excitement to be stepping into the new season that God had for us, because we knew we were following the call of God in our lives. But it's also that uncertainty of leaving what has become such a stable home, and pretty much then saying, okay, we're giving up everything to follow the call of God in our lives. And for Ben, this is the first time for him to be making this commitment to move overseas long term. And that was very hard for his parents too, because he's from America. And so, especially for his mom, I think it's pretty hard.
Yeah, I think that was one of the hardest things, was saying goodbye to parents and my mom, and you don't know when you're going to see that person again, and you're crying, and it's just, it's like, you don't want to see them sad and stuff like that. So that was a hard thing. But, we did feel and do feel the call of God on our lives to be here in Japan. So we're very thankful to be here. And I think the way we left our church, Cornerstone Church in Michigan, really helped set us up for success. Because the pastor said, would you be able to stay a little bit longer? We're sending some of the pastoral staff to plant a church. Can you stay? And actually, I stayed for almost an extra 2 years, and that was maybe my favorite season at the church as well. I became the youth pastor, and I transitioned into a different leadership role, and it was just really great. And I felt like honored the pastor, and now they are our biggest supporters as missionaries. They're our home church, sending church. And we just have a great connection relationship with them. So I'm just super thankful how that all worked out.
So I can remember Daniela, my youngest daughter, having a conversation.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Were you? Do you want to say it?
No, carry on.
Having a conversation, Debbie, with your grandfather.
Oh.
Yeah, your grandfather.
Melvin.
I have to get these generations right. Wow. And she said to him, what is the secret to your success? And she was a young teenager then. And he said, I waited till I got the blessing of my church before I left. Wow. And that is what you're saying. His
was a very prolonged wait. But it's still the same route.
Yeah. So there is another key. So looking back, you had this time in America. What do you think you learned from that has set you up for success in Japan?
I don't know if I would have been ready to come and become a missionary if I hadn't worked there and learned so much stuff about ministry, full-time ministry, working with people, leading, preaching was a huge thing. We were doing a Sunday, I don't know about all 7 years, but for a while, we were doing a Sunday morning, a main adult service, plus a second youth service, a young adult service on Tuesday, and a youth service on Wednesday. And we'd bring in like a couple hundred kids, and we'd bus people in, and or a couple hundred people all together, and it was just great for our youth service. And we were preaching and emceeing, me and some of the young adults team, and Debbie was as well. And we were learning to communicate and lead and all of that. And I think it was super helpful in learning to work hard and work as a team and raise up volunteers, raise up leaders. So all of that was super helpful, and and we can apply it to ministry here in Japan. So I'm really thankful for that.
And I think similar to what my grandfather said was the value that we learned of being under authority, being under that spiritual authority. We did not want to leave the United States without the spiritual covering. And so we talked a lot with our pastors, and it was a process of several years, because it was a 5-year commitments up. Can you please stay on? Our hearts, we do feel a heart calling for missions, but yes, we'll stay on. And then another year passed. Can you stay on another year? And so it was like that top conversations with them, but then also saying, we want to go with your blessing, and we want to be sent forth from you guys. And that's exactly what happened, to the point where now, being here on the mission field, we feel still like we have a strong connection with our pastors there and the pastoral staff and church members. So we feel like there's still like friendships. When we go back to America, we've got like friends we can talk to. And actually, one of our good friends is coming to Japan tomorrow to come serve for 6 months here with us.
And she was one of our interns at the church. It was cool. But the senior pastor, I just remember this. And he said, you can go with a blessing, you can be blessed, or you can be sent. And in his mind, we had worked there 5 years. I'll bless you. You guys can go. And no hard feelings or whatever. But then there was something extra and special when now we're being sent. And in his mind, especially, and I really wanted to be sent. I didn't just want the blessing. I wanted their backing and their sending, And so I felt like we got that, and very thankful for that.
Yeah.
Of course, you mentioned, Ben, about the heartache of your parents, and I think this is often something that isn't taken into the equation with people. That I really have feel for that. And of course, Debbie, your parents sent you all.
Yeah.
I mean, all your children, all their children, all their grandchildren. I mean, that is living out the message in a profound, painful, and a way that I highly honour for both your parents, that you would do that.
Yeah. How did, for you, Ben, how did you walk that out with your parents?
I think it was a long journey, and talking with them and keeping them in the loop, asking them to pray, I think, and just talking with them and having them also be a part of it, and sharing my heart and my dream and what God's called me to, to do. And so I think that was very, very important. So it's one of the best things here is we do have some family, Debbie's sister and brother and their family. We love working with them. And that's like one of the best things. And one of the hardest things for me is like seeing my family all together on a holiday, posting a picture, and we're the only ones not there. It's like, my heart kind of aches and breaks. And I wish, they're like, oh, we wish you could be here. And I'm like, I do too. We love you. We'll see you in a year and a half or something. I don't know. So
you're like, I can't be dealing with this. Let me remove my family from social media.
So let's take a jump across the ocean. So here you are in Japan. I cannot even begin to think of learning that language, of writing that language. I mean, I can think of when we go to Brazil, we find it fairly easy. We read things, we hear
can understand things a bit.
We can because we've been back and forth. We can't speak it, but
you can kind of pick up enough words to piece the sentence together.
But Japan feels like a whole other thing. Can you talk to us, both of you, about your transition back there? What were the challenges? How have you walked those out? Because I think sometimes people have this kind of glorified idea. I'm going to the mission field and I'm going to win all these souls and everything's going to be amazing. Well, it may be amazing, but there are a few buts along the way. Can you talk to us about your journey right the other side of the earth?
Yeah. So for native English speakers, Japanese is it's in the hardest category to learn the language. So it's like one of the absolute hardest languages. The grammar's backwards and confusing. And they have the kanji, which is like the Chinese letters that came from China with their own twist on it and Japanese twist on it. And then they have two more alphabets they use like three alphabets. And it's really a complicated language, and we worked real hard. We've heard as missionaries, you should spend 2 years on language study and learn the language. And so we've been just trying to stay encouraged, and whenever you understand something or have a good conversation, yay, I was able to make a phone call. And you have to be positive and stay encouraged, or else you can kind of get discouraged about, I have so much further to go. But I think one of the big things that was one thing that the Lord was speaking to Debbie about when he told you, if you don't come, you'll regret it for the rest of your life, is you learned a lot of the language.
Back in college,
And that
so when I came for that 1 year time, as a single young person, my brain was able to absorb so much faster, it felt like. And I was just with a lot of young adults, just hanging out with these youth and practicing Japanese and learning as much as I could. Well, after like 10 years, being in the United States, I lost it all. But when we got to Japan, suddenly I'd like know how to say something. And I'm like, where did that come from? How do I know that? Or how do I know what phrase they just said? It's because I had learned it 10 years prior. So it's pretty amazing.
We're so thankful for that. It's huge.
Now coming back with a family and kids, that is the most challenging part of our time here, I think, is the language. Not even being able to read, because they have so many characters that in one word, you read it one way. In another word, it's the same character, but you read it another way. And it's like so confusing. So not even be able to read. However, Google Translate and different app services it's amazing what technology has done. So we're very thankful for that.
Very thankful.
Really helped our lives. However, paperwork, like school paperwork or anything that would take a native Japanese like 10 minutes to fill out, usually will take us about an hour and a half. It's just that time consuming. Literally an hour and a half, like trying and trying and trying.
Yeah, we use an app called Say Hi in Brazil, which you can speak into, and then it speaks it out in whatever language you're trying to translate into. But
we have it on Bluetooth in the middle of the meal table
on a
so
speaker.
That we can...
Yeah. Well, how about because you're actually juggling like 3 different languages, so you've got English, Portuguese, and Japanese, and so like how obviously the English, I guess, kind of takes care of itself, but I know sometimes if you move to another country and then you don't speak the language of another country you're from, you kind of sort of lose that a little bit. How are you juggling the 3, or are you just kind of focused on one?
I've actually used more Portuguese since I've moved to Japan than I did when I was in the United States, because there's quite a large Brazilian population here in Japan. And our church is bilingual, English and Japanese, but we all offer in-ear Portuguese translations. And I'm on the translation team. So I do help translate like once a month or once every other month into Portuguese. I've been using that. But sometimes, when I try to speak in Japanese and I just don't know what to say, either Portuguese comes out or Spanish, because I think foreign language. And for me, Spanish is foreign language. So I'll start talking just throwing in words in Spanish.
Any language will do.
What's happening? I'm like, you have no idea what I'm saying to them. So it's very mumble jumble in my mind.
But your girls, how have they picked that up?
They're doing great. We really threw our oldest daughter, Isabella, and they start kindergarten at 3 years old. Here, real young. And we got her plugged into kindergarten, and she's
all Japanese.
It's all Japanese. She doesn't hardly speak anything. We're trying to teach her survival Japanese when she goes to school as a 3-year-old, like the word for toilet and the word for water. Just learn those two if you need some water and you need to go to the bathroom. So, but now 3 years in, she is doing great. And so is our second daughter. They just pick it up so natural and natively, and
to the point now where our second daughter, Evelyn, kind of prefers to talk to us in Japanese at home. She just tries playing with her dolls and everything all in Japanese. And so they're really picking it up.
Yeah, they're going to be better than us in Japanese soon, if not already. And they're only like 6 years old and 4.
Tell us a bit more about the work that you're doing there.
Yeah, so we work with Paz Church here, and it's a bilingual church service, and a lot of the Japanese people want to learn English, and a lot of they want to practice and they want to talk to us in English, and of course we all often want to practice our Japanese. But we just talk in English a lot of times with them, and we help teach each other. But our service is in Japanese, English, and then translated into Portuguese. And man, we're excited about what God's doing. He's really growing the church. Jesus said, I will build my church. And he's doing it here in Japan. And even through COVID and everything, we just talked about it today, that our church has grown. It's big. It's larger now than it was before COVID. And that doesn't even include all the people that join us online. So we're really thankful that God is building his church. And we just had, we put months of preparation into these big 3 evangelistic services for Christmas. And we had over 100 visitors to our church service. So I don't know where you're from. If you're in Brazil, their churches are like thousands and huge, but like, for us in Japan, it's very encouraging, very exciting. We're seeing people get saved, seeing people get baptized. How many do we have on a Sunday morning? I think we just had over 100. It was like 112 people at church this past Sunday, I think. Which we meet in a coffee shop, so it's limited space, but it's packed out on Sunday mornings, which is very exciting. Yeah, so actually we couldn't rent. This was before we got here in Japan, but our team was trying to find a location and no one would rent to a church. So I think through prayer and fasting, one of the members felt, what if we started a coffee shop? And sure enough, someone would rent to a coffee shop. So it's a coffee shop Monday to Saturday, and then Sunday we have church there, and family groups, small groups meet afterwards, and it's really just a super great space for us, and we're very thankful God's blessed us with that.
Well, you say that people listen online or watch online. I spy in sometimes.
You do?
I do. I spy in to keep up with what's going on. I have to keep my eye on everybody.
And I'm not sure if you actually... Did you mention whereabouts in Japan you are?
We are in the greater Tokyo area. So the border of Tokyo we're right next to the border of Tokyo. We're in the prefecture called Kanagawa, Noborito, Kanagawa. So yeah, if anyone's in Japan, we'd love for you guys to come join us, get a good cup of coffee and come to church with us.
So in your move in there, give us an example of challenges that you have faced that have, kind of rocked your world a bit out there, or you think, oh my goodness, this is out here. Because again, people think, oh yes, you go on the mission fields and everything's just amazing and you roll along. And I just hear so many people not facing the fact that you don't have shipwrecks anymore, like Paul. But there's challenges.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I think there's oftentimes so many challenges that you have to really be
Don't think about them. Just push forward.
Just keep moving forward. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. There's this constant feeling that we stick out and kind of like, we stick out and we're away
Not
from
just
family,
from society, because Japan is a culture of honor, respect, very quiet. And we are loud Americans with rowdy children, 3 children, which, most families only have 1, max 2. So we're like the bigger family. That's a big challenge.
Yeah. So there's those challenges, the language, the time zone difference. If you're trying to connect with family or friends back home, it's 12 or 14 hours or 15 hours difference. And so there's those challenges, the language, it's trying to do simple things that in America, when we speak the language, it's really easy. And then here it just takes so much more time. So there's those challenges. And
it is very crowded. It is one of the largest metropolitan.
Yeah, it's the largest metropolitan in the world. So go ahead.
So it's very condensed. Just, you walk outside your door and there's always tons of people. There's no yard, privacy. It's just like people everywhere. So our houses are all very small. We're very thankful because we've been blessed with such a big apartment for Japan standards, but it's still quite small compared to what we were used to in Michigan. And it's hard because a lot of us live in apartment buildings, so we don't have a yard for the kids to play in. So that's kind of like the cooped up. If the kids want to go outside, you got to go with them. So it's a very tight space.
That's right. So those are kind of some of the, like we had a home in Michigan. We were out in the country and we had space, so it's a different context here. And the Lord, whatever the Lord calls you to, he gives you grace to do it. And so if you had, don't just try and pursue somebody else's calling. You got to know, what has God called you to do, and God will give you the grace to do it. And so those are some of the challenges. One of the biggest challenges that we've experienced since being here is we actually have 4 children. And so we had 3, beautiful daughters, and our 4th child, they call Japan a missionary graveyard. And actually our 4th child passed away 2 weeks before Debbie was going to give birth to her. And the heartbeat just suddenly stopped, and we ended up, she's in a graveyard here in Japan. And, our story, we don't feel like we don't want to, as missionaries, be, it's not, we're not going to fail. We're not going to give up, but we have, I don't know how to say it, but I hope that, our daughter has passed away, and we're still trusting and believing God that he's going to bring fruit from her life and from everything that we went through. But that was the biggest challenge, is losing our daughter in fall of 2021.
And losing her the other side of the world, away from parents.
During COVID, no one could come see us or anything. It was really difficult. And
what's a big challenge too is because the doctor, once she passed away and we had done some blood work trying to figure out what happened, the doctor comes in and tells me, you did have a condition called cholestasis of pregnancy, which is a condition I actually had with our 2nd daughter in America. And it was caught and it was treated, and we delivered her early, and she was born healthy and is well and thriving today. So it's actually a condition that can be treated, and if caught appropriately on time. And so though I had really tried to express my concern as best I could, even taking a translator with me to the doctor to express, I've had this condition before, please be aware of it. But we had a third daughter in Japan, Eliana, and the pregnancy with her was fine. So there were no complications. It was just a great pregnancy. So then with the fourth, I was with the same doctor. I just said, once I started showing the signs and symptoms of cholestasis of pregnancy, I talked to him about it. I said, I'm concerned about this, but he said, oh no, kind of, it felt like, man, later it's like, oh man, if we had been in America, we would have caught it. We would have been able to communicate better. It would have been prevented. Our daughter wouldn't have died. And those are thoughts that are easy to get stuck in, but we just say, you know what? We don't know what would have been the outcome.
Yeah.
We don't know that it could have been prevented. We don't know that, hindsight, maybe it's 2020, but we still don't know that if I had been treated for the condition, she would have made it. And so whenever that is like the biggest challenge we still face, because the devil will come in and try to, bring those accusations and thoughts into our minds of like, we could have done more to prevent this, or like, man, if you had stayed in the United States, if you had your baby in the United States, this wouldn't have happened. But that's when we just hold on to God and say, okay, God, it has happened, but no matter what, we're going to continue trusting in you, and we're just going to continue firm in you and hold on to you with all we've got, because you are all we've got. You're the only thing that's consistent in the life and in the challenges. So when we are attacked in our minds with those difficult thoughts and feelings and emotions, we really hold on to God and to persevere, to press on.
Yeah. And people go through these really challenging situations like that. Those what ifs. What if I had done this? They could just destroy you if you just continue to walk down that road. And like you said, you're still walking that out. And obviously, you lean on God, and He is faithful. We may not understand in the moment what's going on or how He's going to use that situation. I don't know if you've got a few things that you maybe do, or how you help, at least in this moment right now, help you to cope with dealing with those what ifs for other people that may be walking through those kinds of things. What are some maybe tips or things that you would say to them?
Really, I started reading a lot of books after we lost Esther Joelle, and I just suddenly became a bookworm. I never really liked to read before, but I was like, man, I got to read some books to help me process this grief and all these questions. And the best book besides the Bible that I've read that really helped me get through the hardest, darkest time. I should go get it. I'm trying to remember now. Jerry is a book by Jerry Sitzer called, I just think A Grace Disguised. Mm-hmm. A Grace Disguised by Jerry Sitzer. This book is a book on grief and loss, and how God can turn your grief into a time of hope, and it's really, really powerful because he deals with the questions, those hard questions that you deal with. So reading that book, reading a lot of books on grief, talking with Ben, having that constant, open communication. We, one of our supporting churches in America, some friends, really wasn't even the church, some friends sent us a chunk of money and said, this is for you guys to pay childcare so that the two of you can go on dates and just be together and talk. Don't let this, separate the two of you, but you guys talk it out, spend time together, grieve together. And so we have really taken advantage of that and had to talk out a lot of things between the two of us, going through that. That helped a lot. Practical things like getting exercise and showering and getting dressed for the day, were some things that Ben I'll watch the other kids, Debbie, so you can go for a 20-minute walk and then take shower and then spend time alone with God, reading the Bible and praying and just having that alone time with God. I needed that every day, and he helped me with that.
Yeah.
Those are some of the big things.
Mm-hmm.
It sometimes people talk about faith saying, you've got to believe it, you've got to speak it, you've got to hold on to it, etc., as if that is the exercise you do in order to achieve what you believe in God for. But we have a scripture up in our house, and to me personally, it is an expression of the highest level of faith. Our God is able, but even if he doesn't, yet we will trust him.
Yeah.
And I think, there probably is, but I can't think of a higher level of faith, knowing that God is able. Sure, he's able. But even if he doesn't, yet we're going to trust him.
Yeah.
And you're walking out, which, just my perception, is the highest level of faith that you can walk in. Because I know no greater faith than that. And thank you for sharing that, Debbie. Ben, do you want to say anything about that experience for you before we finish? Because it was your heartache too.
Yeah, I tell you, it was very, very difficult. I think that we grieve differently, for one. And so then needing to take on some more responsibilities and give Debbie time to grieve. She ended up joining actually a mom's
Hope Mommy's
grief group, and just being there for our children, who are 3 older daughters. So is that, yeah, we definitely needed the Lord's help in that. But one really hard thing for me was just the reality of thinking, okay, I was going to have this 4th baby. She was my baby. And we were going to have 4 kids and it'd be all done. And I would look at my 3rd child now, and just when we heard the news that our 4th child had died, I'd look at my 3rd child and just think, okay, she's now my baby. She's not supposed to be my baby. And I was just praying. We would just pray, Lord, please bring this Esther Joelle back to life. Please bring her back. And, we never saw that miracle here, but we have a hope that we will see her again. And we know that, if we never had this child, we never would see her in eternity. And so we do have a hope that she's with Jesus. We will be with her for eternity. And so we're so thankful for our hope in Jesus and for that hope.
How have your girls walked this through? You've got various ages, so there's difference in understanding from the oldest to the youngest, obviously.
Yeah, they're so young, and so they understood, like, she died, and the doctor actually broke all of their hospital COVID restriction rules for us and allowed the girls to come to the hospital room and meet their little sister for the one and only time, while she was with us in our hospital room. So they got to see her. So they see this lifeless baby, and they're like confused. They don't know. They don't really understand what's going on. But I think the hardest part for them was later at home, seeing me grieve and me trying my hardest to, just love on them the best I could while just going through such heartache. And so we started noticing our middle child, Evelyn, she'd start crying about something, and then we'd say, what's going on? She'd say, I'm sad because of Esther Joelle. And she started saying that a lot, and it kind of made us realize, okay, I need to be careful how I grieve in front of them, because I want this to be a healthy experience for them and not, like, I don't know, traumatizing or using this as the excuse for everything kind of feel. So we've talked a lot openly about heaven. We've just talked to them so much about what it's like in heaven, as far as what we know, and when we die, what happens, and having Jesus in your heart and the assurance that we'll see Esther in heaven one day. And so I think that our kids have now come to a place where, like, they always, if we ever say, oh, we have 3 daughters, they'll say, no, we have 4. there's one more, they remind us there's one more sister. And so they're very aware of her life, but also it's not in a sad way anymore, but like one day we're going to see her, and they, I think that though they're young, we've talked a lot about death with them and heaven and life with Jesus on earth and life with Jesus after earth. So it's been a beautiful thing for them to watch them, processing that.
One of the things I talk about at the minute with parents is parenting for eternity. What does it mean to parent your children so 1 million years from now they're going to say thank you? And that's a whole different view of parenting. And yet for you, Esther took a great leap forward. And I love in Scripture that it says the dead in Christ will rise first, and then we will meet them in the air. So I just have this beautiful picture of her arriving with Jesus to greet you, when he comes back. So it is a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story that you are, with Jesus' help, bringing that beauty from the ashes. The ashes will always be there, but so will the beauty. And very, very grateful to both of you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us today.
Yeah, Ben, Debbie, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time and letting us and the people listening or watching enter into your story as well. And I think there's been some really good pieces of advice and things that you've done that other people can learn from and implement those things into their own journeys and struggles as they walk through some of these really difficult situations as well. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Daphne and Andrew. Thank you. It's just been such a blessing to be with you guys.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. We love you guys.
Yeah, we love you too. Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember, if it inspired you, share it with others so we can see more people engaged in this community.